Greetings, Culturians! Today we once again awaken to the showdown of epic proportions. What's more, Bob Iger has found himself in the middle of this mess out of a misplaced desire to get into a hip area of gaming. Yet, the mouse in the middle is the least important part of this conflagration, and this is a rematch for the decade. It's the clash between these two tech titans, and it's just about to kick off. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Epic Games versus monopolist Apple Store 2 ElectricBoogaloo. Here we go. Now, before we get started, just a quick reminder that I am on a subscriber drive. I'm trying to get the channel to 20K subscribers on the channel. Yeah. So, of the 40% of you that are out there watching right now that are not subscribed, please let this be the time that you turn that little red button down there to gray. That's right. Subscribe, because it's free. And I would consider it a personal favor. That would be lovely. I'd be grateful. And now, let's get into the battle of Bob's friends. I'm no Michael Buffer. But it is deja vu all over again. That's right. Epic Games' Tim Sweeney, the mastermind behind Fortnite and some other stuff, is once again locked in with a fierce battle with Apple over app distribution on the iOS devices. Now, this time, Apple is wielding its mighty walled garden marketplace power once more. They actually terminated Epic's developer account, I guess from Sweden or something. And for what purpose? Well, it's because they want to throw a wrench in Epic's plan for its own store application, of course, its own game store. And of course, that obviously wrecks the company's plans for expansion and eventually a game break of Apple's monopoly. A monopoly that the EU has some real problems with, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But this places the billions of dollars in the competitionless situation for Apple in jeopardy. And the fate of the app economy for Apple is definitely on the line if Epic and others are successful in basically unlocking that walled garden, tearing down the drawbridge of protected, garbledy-gook. Because the only thing that Apple can point to is that the apps that are on there are tested and guaranteed to work and are quote-unquote secure. I'm looking at you, Apple, about TikTok. Let me tell you, TikTok is not secure. But why are we here again? Why are we subjected to yet another epic clash of these two? Because I thought they already worked this out. Well, when it comes to Google, they did. And it really is all Apple's fault. They have an iron grip over their app store. And they really love their Apple tax, which is a off-the-top revenue skim that Apple takes on every transaction. Whether you're buying a game or a component of the game, Apple has to take their cut. And it's substantial. It's not small. It's not just a transaction fee. It's a giant chunk of revenue that Apple truly doesn't deserve. And because smartphones are ubiquitous, they're everywhere. Everybody uses one, and they have to use the marketplace that their phone allows for. You really have a locked-in customer base in a very unfair way. There's no opportunity for competition in that framework, and that's, monopolistic. There is something to Apple's argument that they do have to maintain some kind of control of the apps that are put on their phones. But not really. It seems to have always worked with other devices. I mean, you could sideload a bunch of stuff on your Galaxy or different Androids. You can even put it on your own OS. I mean, Calyx is out there for any kind of an Android device or any of the other things that come out of Google. So it's odd that they have to assume control of nearly everything. Now, at the same time, Epic has some ambitious plans for the Epic Games Store that I mentioned earlier. They've been looking for ways to sidestep this whole walled garden thing for a while and retain revenue that it earns, bringing their costs down for customers, which may mean that Fortnite could be less expensive for the DLC or the skin junk that you want. So, in a daring challenge to Apple's dominance of, again, its competitionless marketplace, they, started working on this process. And in response, Apple elected once again to spark a battle royale that threatens to reshape handheld gaming once again. Basically, maybe potentially destroying its future or maybe even their marketplace's future, because Apple's quest to stifle innovation and competition is, well, a problem. It's an antitrust problem. And because it's Sweden, and very specifically on that side of the globe, this could be an EU problem and an EU decision, because there's some new laws out there maybe Apple should be paying attention to. As such, there are tensions that are escalating, and the battlefield is shifting to the courtroom. And there are going to be lawyers sparring over antitrust allegations and the contractual dispute that Epic has with Apple. According to Apple, anyway. Apple's trying to wield its power unfairly, according to Epic. And while, again, Apple says you're breaching our contract, you're in non-compliance, they've really kind of exacerbated the situation and maybe also put their foot in it, because they sent a letter. In fact, in that letter from Apple to Epic Games, Apple called Epic Games verifiably untrustworthy. And that's a quote. It's more than a little bit spicy, and it's fighting words. The problem is, in Europe, Apple may not have the law on their side, because amidst all the legal theatrics that are likely to occur, there are some fundamental questions here. Should one company hold unchecked power over the digital marketplace? That's fundamental. Isn't it a bit of a monopoly, and aren't those illegal pretty much everywhere in the world? As Epic is going to argue, they want the more open ecosystem where developers are free to innovate and compete on a level playing field. Apple, on the other hand, defends its right to maintain the controls that we talked about earlier. They're always going to pivot to this security and user experience junk. Now, there's no mention from Apple ever of the huge profits that they glean from this, for doing very little. And in the EU, this is going to be an issue, and it's going to be resolved rather quickly. Apple may already be in violation of the EU digital markets law at this very moment. In fact, I can almost guarantee that they are, which means that they're going to start to get probably either heavily fined or forced into compliance. And this is kind of like the last time this happened. The true cost of this conflict comes into focus really easily. You're going to have the folks on iPhones unable to participate in Fortnite or partake of any of these Epic games that are going to be offered on this Epic Game Store. And truly that robs the full experience from, well, other gamers, because they can't take advantage of the iPhone handhelds with their consoles, like their PlayStations or their PCs, and just beat their brains in, because that's usually what happens. But with Epic's developer account now terminated, the company faces an uphill battle to regain its footing in the iOS ecosystem, at least for the time being. And Apple's actions send kind of a chilling message to any other developer that's daring to challenge that status quo and trying to circumvent the monopoly that Apple has. And if you do try to do that, you're going to get pitched out into the digital wilderness. You won't be able to access the customers that are on those phones. So Apple just doesn't want to compete in a fair market economy. So where do we go from here? Well, as Apple and Epic are engaged in another war of words, and they're pulling back to regroup for the next round of legal battles, which I imagine are going to start anytime now, the democratization of app distribution and open marketplaces are going to hang in the balance until the EU and the United States figure it out, because everybody else will fall in line with one of the two big powers getting their act together. The fact that this has already been decided in the EU, it just hasn't been challenged in this way, leads me to believe that at least we'll find something out from the EU over the course of the next 6 months to a year. Or at least that's what we could hope for. Now, of course, here in the States, the courts could intervene in a bigger way. They could actually break up Apple's monopoly, kind of like they could break up Google's monopoly, which, well, there's no arguments. They kind of each have their own kind of monopoly in various spaces, or in multiple spaces, depend on how you look at things. This means that things like Epic's Game Store could emerge victorious from something like this and really stir things up so that you can basically go shop at multiple marketplaces and pick out the things that you like. Will they have to keep that marketplace secure? Of course. Are they taking on a little more responsibility? Yes, they are, but at a cost that is far less than the Apple tax, which I think pretty much everybody's tired of paying. Now, only time will tell if this actually happens, but one thing's for certain. The fight for digital dominance is far from over. And, well, I have a quick aside for you, because before we wrap up, I want to kind of share some thoughts. This is a culture story time. It turns out that Bob Iger, because I love mentioning him, he's just kind of best buddies with both Tim Cook at Apple and Tim Sweeney over at Epic Games. They're all besties. Well, they're not all besties, but Bob's besties with both of them. And as it turns out, in fact, Bob Iger's efforts at incubation actually helped get Tim Sweeney started with this latest endeavor called Fortnite. He started out that kind of help all those years ago. There's obviously some more to that story, and you can certainly find it for yourself, but I think that's kind of interesting because he's gone out of his way to partner with both of these companies, and they're not on the best of terms. And with this recent move to put Disney in the middle of Fortnite to the tune of $1.5 billion with nothing to show for it so far, at least as far as Epic Games and Disney's partnership is concerned, he really does potentially strain the relationship that he has with Tim Cook at Apple. And let me tell you, Disney really doesn't need that right now, considering that a lot of what they do, especially with their theme parks, cruise ships, and all the other interests that they have an app that they have to get, or multiple apps they have to get on their store. This could be a problem. So I ask you, how is it that Bob seems to keep putting himself in the middle of legal fights as easily as he is? It seems like it's almost daily, even when he's not running the company where there's some kind of legal thing going on. That's very weird. So, dear viewers, what do you think? Is this second battle with Apple versus Epic going to end up tearing down Apple's walled garden? That's a good question. Is it possible that they could get in trouble for a monopoly and this could go even further? And from the courtroom showdowns to the corporate brinksmanship, which could be here, the battle for control over digital marketplaces isn't going anywhere, at least for the time being. But we may have some decisions pretty soon. Is there a chance that this could make things better for publishers and creators and even customers? Those are all good questions, and I'm interested in your thoughts. So please let me know with your comments below what you think about any of the questions I've asked today. And, well, let me know if there are any thoughts that you have on the subject matter, because I am interested. This is one of those times where I get to talk about tech and gaming and law and Disney, which, I talk a lot about this. Anyway, let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thanks for that. Be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see you.